It's easier that way. We'll try that. Don't know how visible the screen is on there. Let's wander over and grab that. Are you happy if we make a start then?
Mm.
Yeah, okay. Let's get it going. Perfect, that's the audio on as well. Right, so we'll make a start then as it's 9 o'clock and you're here. Well done, thank you very much. So this week we're going to focus on sessions. So our main teaching session is the PHP sessions one, which we'll have a look at. One or two things to say about that particularly, and of course the lab will focus on that. This is in effect the last teaching lab, maybe I'll call it that. So there's 8 labs in the series, and the first 7 we're aiming to sort of take you through step by step, so that you get confidence in doing the various things you need, particularly for the coursework. The last lab we're not doing next week, we're doing the week after that, and it's a little bit different. We'll save that until then, but you'll see where we are with that when we get there. So there's no, as I say, there's no lab next week, so there's nothing on the Thursday, but on the Monday we want to do a coursework question and answer. If you've got anything pressing that you want to ask this morning, I haven't put it in here, but you can ask this morning. But the idea is that for next week, you'll have had a little bit of time to be looking at the coursework. So aim to have at least made a start and to have had a go at it, so that should hopefully generate some questions, and you can bring your coursework along to the session next Tuesday. And the idea is then that we'll go through that with you and give you a hand with your, give you. We won't do your coursework for you, obviously. What we'll aim to do is, if you've got issues that you're struggling with, to help you answer questions. If you're a bit stuck with something, aim to give you a steer in the right direction. It's that sort of thing we'll be doing. So what about this morning? Well, there's a few texty things this morning, so we'll do the feedback on the lab. We'll think about video 7 briefly, and then and then we've got, I think I bumped design theory down here, so then we'll do the handling not found errors. That's in one way it's a little bit of an aside, but it opens up a number of issues that you might find helpful. Then we'll do the design theory and the designing responsibly and accessibly and so on. And the last bit would be the PHP sessions, and that's the bit that you especially need for the lab this week. So let's do the feedback on the lab then. Have you had a chance to see the notes on the feedback? Okay, so just to take you through it then, and for those of you who've not had a chance to see the feedback yet, we did feel it was a particularly good lab this last week. Your motivation is good. It is lovely to see your determination, all 3 groups, to develop nice solutions, solutions that go above and beyond the basic requirements. Josh, one group, having done the lab, then went back. So you made sure you got everything done correctly. Then went back and did the extra bits, and we did credit you for that. And it was reflected in the marks with a lab average across the board for all three groups was almost 10% higher than in previous weeks. So that was really nice to see. But three specifics, they are, they're in a sense sort of things, little things that we're picking up on, but in some ways they're quite important things. So some of you need to think before you click. It can be a real thing in IT that you sort of get to something and you just think, oh, click, 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 click. And as an aside, a preview for the GDPR session when we get there, folk rely on that when they are redesigning their websites now for GDPR, so that you'll just click through the pop-ups without even reading them and just sign away your rights to anything, your personal data, whatever. And there are quite a few sites out there that are relying on you doing that because you just think, oh, get rid of pop-up, and then they're grabbing all your data and selling it on, and you just agreed to that because you clicked through. And interestingly, with a lot of sites, if you don't click through but say reject or manage or whatever, you'll find it, the default will be they won't take your data and sell it on, and so it's worth doing that. Actually, it's worth stopping and looking. But particularly in the labs, it is well worth stopping long enough to see what's on the screen and responding appropriately. The computer usually tells you if there's a problem that's liable to come up later, and the danger is if you just click through, by the time you know there's a problem, you've already got rid of all the error messages that would have told you what was going on. So first one is think before you click, second one is plan before you code. Don't just go straight in, oh I know what I need, boom, throw it in, whatever. Think about what you're doing. So this is Russell's comment actually, which I think is brilliant. All code is a business process, if you think about it, and therefore, if you think about it, you cannot code until you've identified the process. We talked a little bit about that, and it really is important to hang on to that and get that in your head. You do need to identify the business process, identify what you're trying to achieve, and then start coding, not just code something and see if it gives you something that is going in the right direction. Third one is do not copy and paste. Now we talked a little bit about using other people's code, but copying and pasting passwords, we talked about that, that's fine, yes, obviously. But in terms of code, when you copy and paste someone else's code, you're taking their code out of context. That's the first problem. There is a second problem actually, which is that you will find an awful lot of code out there that is bad code for a variety of reasons. It might have been good code back in the day, but if it's 10-year-old code, which you might not immediately notice, then it may take you down a completely wrong track. And it is, I found that particularly when we first went from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4, there were a lot of Bootstrap examples that were dire. And they were dire because they were taking everything that folk had done on Bootstrap on the XHTML background and were trying to apply it to the HTML5 context. And it really, really gives you awful examples. I think they've improved that a lot now, but as I say, it was only a year or two ago that the change happened. And in the initial, my first thing when I first looked at Bootstrap 4 was that it was rubbish, because all the examples, it was just taking me back to the dark ages. And then I realised it wasn't Bootstrap 4 that's the problem, it's the examples with Bootstrap 4 that are the problem. So you really, really need to be careful and make sure you understand. So it says here, everything is best done from scratch. And also inappropriate variable names are a giveaway. They might have been perfect for the context in which the code was written, but if it doesn't match your context, we're thinking, oh, okay, so you just copied it and you haven't thought through what you're doing here. So those three things: think before you click, plan before you code, don't copy and paste. So those are the three that we'd say you really need as a group. That's so individually, individuals of you need to focus more on one than the other. But those are things that are worth keeping in your head and dealing with. Okay, let me just ask you then. Let's move on to video 7. Have you watched video 7? You can be honest. No. Okay, right. Video 7 is really important. You do need to watch it. So I know Sam was hoping to watch it, so maybe Sam, maybe you've watched it, I hope so. So make sure you go away and watch it, and I'm going to ask you to watch video 8 as well this week. So, and they're not long actually. I purposely made sure I kept them all under 10 minutes this time round. What's in video 7? I'll just take you into that so you know what you need to look at. In video 7, it looks at the Aging Surfer's website, which up until now has just been a straight CSS design with looking at how HTML5 works in terms of giving you nice named boxes of header and nav and main and footer and so on. And we've designed it so that it sort of responds to width, but when it goes very narrow, you've still got these massive margins either side which are inappropriate, the text is too big and so on and so forth. So video 7 looks at making the Aging Surfer's website responsive. So there's a few things in there. There's the viewport statement. You need to look at that and how it works. You need to look at the @media sections in CSS and how they work. You need to look at the idea of when you're designing, you'll need to design breakpoints. At what point do you remove the margins? At what point do you go to a smaller text? And you need to think those things through. And having Bootstrap isn't a get-out clause. You do need to be aware of this and to be able to deal with it and to be able to talk about it, for example, on interview, or for example, in an example. There's some other stuff in there about the first section, which will only be understood by legacy browsers, then the @media sections, which specify things that are different for different widths. It also talks about cross-browser design. That's important. Okay. Nowadays it's not quite as important, but the principle matters about thinking about how you design to hit the maximum number of browsers. It talks about testing everything with developer tools, which hopefully you're doing it anyway by default now. Legacy browser compatibility, and this thing is probably getting less and less important now, but the legacy browser fix for Internet Explorer. So the bit about legacy browser fixing is important. The really old stuff like Internet Explorer stuff probably has widely gone away, but you need to know how to check about whether it's still an issue or not for your context. So that's all the stuff that will be generated to get you thinking about it from the video. I think we are into that. Oh. Actually, what I might do. Oh, we'll leave it on that maybe. Probably as easy as anything. We'll get into customizing 404 errors next, okay? So what's this all about? Well, let's have a little look. We're going to think about, so we're thinking about 404 errors, what happens when someone looks for something or clicks a link and it says not found. Why am I bothering dealing with it? How do I customize it? And then the issue of sending emails. How would I send emails and why would I send emails? That's what we're going to cover. So why should I bother changing? There is a default for 404 errors on pretty much every server unless it's been broken or not set up right or whatever. So many people don't bother customising the 404 not found page. It should be a server default, so use it, and others are used to seeing it. I think there. So here we go. Here's a default 404 page. You can do this one right now if you want. If you go to the notes pages and type in plod, that's exactly what you'll get. I'm not going to do it. But you'll be used to seeing that default fonts, and it just says very little other than look for this particular resource and couldn't find it. So why bother? You can make it look pretty. Sometimes the default isn't there. You can't guarantee that the default will be there on the server. We can make it look pretty, and crucially we can make it look like it belongs. So I'm going to give you some examples here. I believe this is a sample site, one that I work on with a chap up in Salisbury. So the actual site is in fact Wessex. Oh, okay. Right, so I've not taken it from there. So this actual site is Wessex Scottish Country Dancing, and there's a number of different clubs all operating on this site. But if you try and search for something and it doesn't find it, you get a special 404 page, oops, and the page with password doesn't exist, and so on. So you can see that although the menu is different, the layout is very similar. So you've made it look like it belongs, and you're still under the control of the website, which you are. There's a few things here that we'll talk about in the next few slides. So why am I bothering? Maybe I want to know that something's gone wrong. Maybe someone has looked for something and not found it, and that might be because I've got a broken link, and I might want to know that I've got a broken link. So having a specialised 404 page can help me by automating the thing that says, oh look, someone's looked for something, you've got a broken link, which you didn't realise, you ought to check that. Maybe I've moved something, maybe I've changed something, maybe I'm unintentionally annoying my visitors. And it's a good idea not to annoy your visitors if you want them to keep coming back. How do I customise it? Well, first of all, you need to create a custom 404 page, and you need to save it as something. So I'm calling this one at the moment notfound.html, and I'm putting it in the root directory for my website, not the root of the server, the root of their website. And you can see that the head the HTML, the head and the body, and you kept it really simple in this. Just so it does very little. So the page you've asked for doesn't exist. You could mail to DRs, whatever. That relies on that sort of link. That obviously relies on them having their email client set up to respond to that sort of link. Or you could sort it out yourself. Try Google or whatever. And I don't know if I haven't got an example of that. That gives you something very basic indeed, but it gives you the idea of how you can get your own page pointed to when you do a not found. Then I need to create or modify a .ht access, also in the root directory of the website. And it will just be a text document with, in particular, this single line of text in. There may be other lines of text. There may be a .ht access already in there, and it may have something like error document 500 server error.html. That handles server errors if the server's gone down. But if it's a not found, you have error document 40, so a 404 error, it will go and look for not found.html. So what we're looking at here is the blue line is the one that deals with the not found errors, but we can deal with other errors also. There are different sorts of errors. You can look them all up on the Apache documentation. What about sending emails? So the above example allows people to send you an email. If they want to, they can click on the link, fill in the bit of stuff and say, I've found this problem on your website. No one will ever do that. I have some plenty of experience over the years of in a different context, producing commercial software with a bug in, and it was only a few 2 or 3 years later when I came to do the updated version, as I was going through it, I thought, but there's a bug in here. This bit can have never ever worked. nobody ever told me. It's, oh, okay, right. And I did check it through, and it was correct. It didn't actually work. It failed when you tried to do this, but nobody ever reported the error to me. No one will ever report errors. They'll just get upset and go away and do something else. But you maybe still want to know. You want to stop having people getting fed up and walking away, for example. So an automated email might be good. So rather than relying on them clicking, you want it so that as soon as the 404 page comes up, it sends you an email. And we can do this if instead of doing our page in HTML, we do it in PHP, so we have to change the name to notfound.php and use the PHP Mail Function. So this is a bit long. This is the sort of thing you'll have to sort of go away and look at the slides afterwards probably and work out what's going on there. Actually, the top bit, these 6 lines, are not necessarily hugely, they're not the important thing as far as sending the email is concerned. What I'm doing here is saying, okay, something's gone wrong, I need some information to help me know what's going on here. So we get the relevant information from the $server global variables, okay? And there are 6 things, not all of which work very well, but let's get them anyway. So the requester, that is the URL that if I've got this right, no it's not, I can't remember what the requester is, you'll have to look that up. The remote address is what's the address of the remote server, that would be IP address I believe. The host name is the lookup in effect that says what's the actual name of that remote server. I'll come back to some of these later. It's the referrer that I was getting muddled with. It's the referrer that is the URL of the page with the broken link in, the page that they were going for. You have to be careful with this because the referrer might be on your site. The referrer might be something like Google. They might have come in from outside and are coming in from Google to your site, and it might be that the search engine is pointing to something on your site that is no longer there. That's a different set of issues. And also the referrer might not even be specified. Typically, if there's no referrer specified, you might very often find that it's a web crawler or a hacker, an attacker who's looking, just probing your site. So that's very interesting information if that's blank. The remote host and remote user are usually blank if I remember rightly, but it might tell you a bit about the remote incoming person. As far as the message is concerned, it's this bit that's the bit that we're interested in for the PHP Mail Function. You have to have the mail function implemented on the server, but it usually is, because if you're on a Linux box, Linux usually sends emails to admin, so it has to have the mail functionality up and running anyway. But you can't guarantee it's working on it will work on every server, it just usually does. So you need a to address, so I put in my to email address. The subject, so this is for Wessex SCD, so I put Wessex Scottish Country Dancing Not Found Problem. We call them NFPs because we're often monitoring these. NFPs is just our own little acronym to tell us what we're thinking about. And then a message. And the message is there's been a not found problem on the Wessex SCD site. That must be return, new line, and then we'll give the information, requester, remote address, remote host, host name, referrer. So we've got all the information spread out on the email so we can see what's going on there. And then we word wrap the message because that works better in email. If you chop it to a width of 70, it will do that so you don't break words over a line. And then you can send the message, and this is the magic message, magic code in PHP. Just simply mail brackets to string, the email email address, the subject string, what the subject is about, and the message. You'll find that there'll be other things that you can do with that, but that's the sort of key to sending yourself an email in PHP. And then we go on and render the displayed error page as before. Now, if I do just that, you will then have a problem. I said dozens, you could have hundreds of emails every day. And there's a number of reasons for that. But there are some really interesting things going on. So there are good bots on regular visits. So if you track what's happening through the logs, for example, you will find that you should hopefully have Google, Bing, is it Baidu, the Chinese one, Yahoo, should all be on there several times a day. If they're not, worry, because that means you won't be registering on the on their search engines. So all of those should be coming in every day, just probing around, causing not found errors because they're just sort of looking at everything. And unless you put up a robots.txt file, which is another set of issues, then they'll be just looking at random for stuff that isn't showing on your website, but still has links in and saying, well, these links don't go anywhere. Of course they don't. But then you also have bad bots fishing around. So certain sites, like you can usually tell it from the URL. So I don't think I've had them for a while, but something like badboys.nl. I think, well, even the URL gives you a clue as to what they're about, and they will probe around looking for. Funny, they're very often looking for things like WP-admin. Okay, so you're looking for particular files. They're assuming I'm running WordPress, because that's the WordPress admin directory, and they're looking for particular suspect files. And you can trace all of this when you're looking at the logs and so on. It's good fun. So you're looking for you've got bad bots fishing around, but you may also have broken links. That's the one I want. That's the one I need to know about. If there's a broken link, I need to pick that out of the mess of stuff that's going on there. I might have moved stuff which would cause a broken link, or there might be historic links. So I've done a site update. So this is where the bots like Google and so on may have a problem, because I've got I've done a site update, and now everything is consistent within the website, but Google is still pointing to the old stuff. Now the reason you want the good bots coming in several times a day is because they will chase that around, and particularly Google is very good at sorting that out. So very quickly, within a week or so, they should have sussed most of that out and got their links sorted. Can I make sense of all of this? Yes. What I need to do, what I don't want is I don't want to be getting 100, 200 emails a day from this not found stuff. So if I implement some logic, I can say, well, don't send an email if they're looking for robots.txt because it's a search engine. But we might decide that instead of sending an email, I might want to log the visit so I know these bots are coming in and looking for stuff. I don't want to send an email if there's no referrer. That's the page they come from, because if there's no referrer, then it's not a broken link. It might be an issue for some other reason, but it's not something I need to worry about in terms of broken links. And I probably don't want to send an email if the referrer isn't a page on our website. I might want to trawl through a log at some stage and see, does this mean that some of the search engines are pointing to out-of-date pages? Should I do forward links? So take the old links and say, you now need to look at this page. I can do that. I could do it actually within the not found code if I wanted to. There are a few other things I can do, but for now we'll stick with that and say getting the logic right is a case of trial and error. You might decide you don't want to go down this route anyway. I've had conversations with folk before where folk have said, why would you do your own error message on a 404? You'll just get inundated with the emails. Well, if you get the logic right, you won't. And spending a little bit of time looking at it is quite useful, because it gives you such a good idea of what's going on your website, and who's coming in and who shouldn't be coming in, and so on and so forth. So doing it can give you customized error messages, that's nice. It can record visits, that's good. You can see what the bots and crawlers are doing, that's good. Crucially, we can be alerted to any broken links on a website, that's good. And it will also alert to the non-obvious, so case errors. What you may not know is that the majority of web servers are Linux based one way or another, and have been pretty much for the whole history of the not of the internet, of the web, actually probably of the internet actually. And Linux is case sensitive. So I don't know if I've got an example. No, not yet. I'll go through those in a minute. But there is an example coming up with a case error in it. So lowercase li, capital N, lowercase ks. And if the file is links, all lowercase, they are treated as two completely different files. And therefore it's a not found error. However, two things. First of all, a Microsoft server has never understood the concept of case. So small lowercase li, capital N, lowercase ks. So Microsoft has always been, it's been the same thing as capital links or lowercase link. They're all the same, have traditionally always been the same thing on a Microsoft machine. So there's an issue there. And there's also the issue that on the DNS system, where we're looking at the front bit before the first slash, so secure.ecs.sutton.ac.uk, up to that point, that is all not case sensitive. You can put upper, lowercase, whatever you like, it'll still get there. Okay? So you've got this problem of confusion over whether case matters or not in a URL. So actually being aware of potential case errors on URLs matters. Okay, we'll come back to that one. So for example here I've got the Wessex SCD site again, still on the Spiffing site, and I've typed in glob there in order to make sure I get an error. And the page now says, oops, the page you've asked for doesn't exist. It looks as though you've typed the web address into the bar. Yes, I did. You can pick that out by looking at it and seeing where did that come from, and the suitable logic will pick that out. So go to the home page and follow the links from there, and then you won't have the typing it in, or email it or sort it out and go to Google or whatever. This one, here's the case error, li capital N there, that's the one I talked about. So on this version, you find if you go to Wessex SCD now, we do something different. But at this point, when I made these slides up, it looked at that and said, I wonder if you really want spiffin links.php, all lowercase. If so, click that and it will get you there. There's an advantage in doing that. What we now do on this site is we don't even ask the question, we just redirect to links. We just push it. If there's a matching all lowercase one, we just push it straight there and don't even ask the question. You could, and again you've got the rest of it, like go to our home page, email us, try Google, that sort of thing. And this one is a genuine broken link, and I did it by putting this ridiculous link on this particular page. I think that must have been, I don't know how I got that up like that. I can't believe I did that on the live website. So because it was an actual link, but to something that doesn't exist, I'm able to pick that out and say the page you've asked for doesn't exist. This is probably our problem rather than our mistake. If so, we'll aim to fix this as soon as we can. A message has already been sent to tell us about this because it sent the automated email. But in the meantime, you could email us at, or go back to the main Wessex site, or use Google. So you can change the message depending on the logic that you've implemented in your 404 page to give you a different response. And this one is asking for robots.txt, and this was one of these sort of a bit like Easter egg stuff. There is, if you run a Linux system, buried way down in the core of the Linux system, I think it's still there. If you do a command line print to the printer, and the printer is switched off, you will get a little error message that says, oops, printer not working, on fire again, eh? And it goes on in that sort of vein, and you think, okay, some programmer was very, very bored when he wrote that error message, which I can imagine. This is sort of down that vein. Oops, the page you've asked for doesn't exist. It looks as though you are a search engine requesting robots.txt, because only search engines ask for that normally. If so, you're probably a good bot, because bad bots don't look for robots.txt, they don't care. And you're most welcome anywhere on our site. Mind you, if you are a search engine, you won't be reading this page, so this is a waste of time. Oh, such is life. If you are a human being, why are you looking for robots.txt? We'd be most interested to know, and so we go on with it. So that was me playing on that one. Why am I now not moving forwards? Am I at the end? It appears that's the end. I didn't think that was the last slide. Okay, is there anything else I need to say about 404? I don't think so. So I think really, sorry, that's completely thrown me. I didn't realise that was the last slide on that. So basically, you've got the idea. First of all, you can send emails from PHPs. That's an issue. Secondly, you can have fun with 404, but also along the way, you can have a look at things like what are bots doing on my website, what are crawlers doing, what are the hackers doing, and you can see them all. And I'd much rather see what the hackers are trying to do and be aware of it and be one step ahead of them, than just keep them at bay and not know about it, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's that one. Let's now have a little look. Oh yeah. How are we doing on time? We're going to get through all of this by about 10 o'clock if we're at the rate we're going. Are you okay with this? The trouble is we're packing a lot of stuff in, that's the only thing. Right. So, the next two slides, this one will be very short actually, but these are just a few thoughts about design, okay? So, I know we've had a few thoughts about design, but there are some things that are worth thinking about for things like the coursework that you've now got and ideas that you can apply to it. So, also I know you've got the, what is it, user interactions or something course that you've got.
Interaction design.
Interaction design, that's it. So some of this you'll be seeing from that. What I want to do is pull out of that area the stuff that you can practically do, things that you can think about with regards to coursework. So there is an excellent site for colour wheel examples. Let me show you that, and it's this one, peloton.com. Paleton.com. Let's do that. So I come to here, and we'll just go in. Peloton.com. Okay, let's move that round a bit. Okay, so the idea of this is a site created by web, people who know about colour and stuff. I know nothing about colour, but it's a bit like when we were first talking about design of websites, and I was saying about Russell had sort of given me a few hints about you want to make sure that the left-hand edges are lined up. Don't get them all straggly. Like your headers might be in one line, your paragraphs might be indented, but they still need to be in line with, for example, maybe the tagline in the header. And so making sure that there are strong lines through the whole page. Same with the colours. You want to make sure that the colours work together. I have no concept of colour in terms of what matches and what doesn't match. So a tool like this can be very helpful. So this one is just saying by default, if you want to work with a basic sort of salmon sort of colour, these are a set of colours, so here's your palette, that will work together, and any designer will say, yeah, that works. You can play with this. So for example, this is your main colour, and you might decide, no, what I actually want is a sort of bluish sort of colour, and it will give you a set of colours here that now have a sort of bluey, purpley, maroon, whatever sort of set of colours that all work together. You can take these colours and say, actually, I'm going to take that one, because you can do fairly mega stuff with that and change it quite significantly. I'm going to move that back to there for now. You can go, so that's monochrome. So it's monochrome, but you're getting the various shades that will work together. Or you could go for 3 colours that will work together. Some of it I look at and think, really? If the designers tell me that's what works, then I'm happy to take their word for it. And you can play around with these and try all the different things and move the colours around, and until you've got something here that you think, oh yeah, I like that, and it will tell you what the colours are, and then you can apply that to your website. Okay, let's go back to, where are we? That must be that one, I think. Yeah. So that's the accent site for colour wheel examples, to give you palettes of colours. Okay. Then next thing is the F design. That's one that my daughter, this is not my graphic design daughter, this is my communications daughter, who works in Oxford, and she was saying that one of the things they look at is the idea of the F design. Now I think this is culture dependent, I suspect, but the idea is that the F is where the most important content is. So the top bit of the F is the longest bit, and that's the bit that matters most, the very top line. The left-hand side is important. Folk will scan down the left-hand side. That's the bit that I suspect is culture dependent, and if you are, say, from a Hebrew culture, the right-hand side might be more important, I suspect, I'm not sure. And then the bar of the F is not quite as long normally on an F, so that means as you go down, the head of the first, so you've got the headline, then the headline of the first block of text is important, but not quite as important, and then that applies going on down. So the headline of the second block of text is even less important, and so on as you go down the F. Consistency we know about, don't change the menu layout from page to page, for example. The pages should look like they belong together, we've looked at that. Golden ratio, that's from the Greeks. They reckoned that their temples needed to be 8 by 5, so typically on a temple you might have an entrance that is 8 units high and 5 units wide. They reckon that was the golden ratio. Apparently 1.618 to 1 is actually more precise than 8 to 5. Hicks law, yeah, that's right. So Hicks law now is a little law that says reduced choice. Don't confront folk with so many choices that you have no idea what they're doing. That's one of the reasons why on a menu I would say keep the main menu options down to 4 or 5 choices. Put too many choices in, you will confuse the punter. Fitts law says make the submit button bigger than the cancel button, since submit will be used far more often. Or if you want to be more controlling about it, the one that you want them to do is the bigger button. So if you want them to click accept, you make it nice and big and green, and if you don't want them to say manage my cookies, you put it in tiny fonts in a tiny little button that folk don't see. It's a small print issue. The rule of thirds. So on a good picture, you will find that the key content lies, if you divide it into 9 little boxes, so divide it in 3 across and 3 up and down. The horizon, for example, should either be on the, depending on what you're focusing on, either on the bottom third or the upper third. Don't put it down the middle. doesn't look right. Try it. Look at a few photos and see. You'll see that good photos typically divide up like that. There are other things about photos, but we won't worry about that. The KISS principle applies to design. So this is 37 Signals, a good site to have a look at that sometime. So they say, we believe that most software is too complex, there are too many features, too many buttons, too much confusion. Just keep it simple. Work out what the user is wanting when they come to, or the visitor is wanting when they come to your website, and make it straightforward for them. So I've said here, there's a few things in here. Simple is not the same as simplistic. It's like the difference between childlike and childish. Okay. So there's a quote here which is from the teaching profession, but actually from the either Victorian or Edwardian age, I can't remember. To teach simply, you must understand deeply. If you're going to make something straightforward for folk to deal with, you have to understand it very, very deeply. And there's also the concept of layered design. So it might look simple, but a good design says as you strip away the outer layers, you realise there's more and more complexity as you go in. So it's fine to be complex, present simply, and then wait until folk are confident in that sort of simpler scenario, and then open the trapdoor, if you like, or whatever it is, peel a layer away and say, look, there's all this underneath. Oh, that's fun, and they can play in that little area then and start to get in deeper and deeper. So the idea is you discover hidden depths. Number 9 is show examples. So your web page should give concrete examples. So you want someone to do something, well, this is how it will work. Show how it goes. Speed matters. If it's too slow, folk would just say, give me strength and walk away. And this is just a reminder that you want to be looking at the Google Developers site. Google Developers is brilliant. You do need to be looking at that all the time. I've said here for the principles of mobile design, but you can look at Google for all sorts of things. And I'm going to go straight on to this one because it's a single issue, but it's really quite important. So this is a design note, which is to say that when you're designing a website, there will be all sorts of things, particularly for things like accessibility, that will be built into the operating system, the web browser, whether you're on a mobile phone, a laptop, whatever it is. There will be tricks in there like pinch zoom on the mobile, or in this case I'm going to say Control and plus or Control and minus, to get a display that's as large as they need or as small as they need. As I've said here, getting the larger font, for example, isn't just for helping the young and the vision impaired, it also helps the elderly and us when we need a big display for lectures, for example. I've used Control Plus on this actual page. Let me show you. This isn't a web page, it's a text file. Well, I suppose it is a web page, really. So that's somewhere, I can't remember if that's now down to 0 or, no, I'm not sure. But so that's Control minus and that's Control plus. You can make it as big as you like. If you go to, let's see if I can go to, well, I know where we can go. We can go here. Lost my mouse again. There we go. This one, I did exactly that on here. So that's the Control minus. That I think is, oh, that's 80%. So that's 100%. If you need it bigger, Control plus just works. I haven't done anything special to make that work. All I've done is I've avoided doing stuff that breaks it. You just keep it simple and it will work. So try and make sure you don't do stuff that will break the accessibility controls that are built into various browsers and so on, is what I'm saying there. And interestingly, where am I? That one? Yeah, that one. Oh, I've lost it now. Control plus. Yeah, okay. So Our responsive design, the one that we're doing on the video series, and the Step 8 example site, for example, which I think, did that go with video 7 or video 8? I'm not sure which one, but it already plugs into that browser fact feature. Aging Surfers does that already because it hasn't locked it out. So in fact, that Control Plus feature works on just about all websites, except, and it's the except that's really interesting. The except is, now I haven't checked this year to check that this is still true, but I'll leave it as an exercise for you to check. Last year, it didn't work on Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Amazon, eBay. None of those did this idea work for. They'd broken it on every single commercial website, a big website that I went to. So you get the idea. The more tricky you try and make it, the more you try and put in this fancy idea and that fancy idea, the more likely you are to break the built-in stuff that makes the web easy for folk to use, and it takes control out of the hands of the user who knows what they need and puts it into the hands of the developer who has no idea who you are and what you need. So that was that one. I think I need a break now for 5 minutes, and I'm sure your ears need a break. We have one thing left to do, which is really important. That's the sessions bit. So are you happy just to take a break for 5 minutes, and then we'll restart. Okay. Have to come round back up and see what I'm doing on there. There, that's what I'm looking for.